Went on to that, and now that in the past 16 months we've moved from kind of the beginning of the 360 PS3 life cycle, and now we're very much into halfway or whatever the new cycle will be. It's very much the hardware's more known, so the needs and difficulty from making the first one have probably been eased. And I was wondering what in the making of the sequel, like what's a new technical hurdle you've found trying to up everything. And even though you know the hardware more, there's probably still something else that's kind of like it's just a difficulty waiting to be overcome.
Not technically, but in terms of the game's direction, it's easier to make, obviously, the sequel, because we know what kind of game we want it to be. Obviously, we have the experience of making one, and we kind of know where this one's going as well. So that has been easier, but everything apart from that is still as difficult as making, the original, or making an original game, because we're trying to up the scale on everything, trying to put so much new content in the game. Just making all of that and making it work and getting it all in there. Of course, you got the co-op and the multiplayer as well to think about. So, everything apart from that is still a challenge.
Just as hard the second time around.
Yeah, just from my own personal experience, usually most sequels just have a few extra characters or a couple of different extra situations, that kind of thing. But in this game, there's just so many new things and so many different things we wanted to do with the game that it's a completely different experience. And I I wouldn't have imagined that making a sequel to a game would be this difficult and this much of a challenge. There's just so many things we want to put into the game that it's a lot of work.
It speaks to that like thesis of the beginning of like the idea that the whole game is about more content across the board, like everything. And I guess that speaks to how difficult it would be just to up everything, because like you said, some games will add more maps, more characters, but this seems to be almost, it could have been with tweaking, it seems like it almost could have been a whole other series or game, like with such a different focus.
Yeah, certainly looking from the amount of stuff that there is, it could certainly be a different game. It could certainly be a completely different game. But I think once you pick it up and play it, you'll feel right at home.
Still had telltale signs of what I remembered liking about the first game, just in a little bit that I already saw. Yeah.
That's exactly what Lost Planet is about. That kind of vertical gameplay, and we saw that so many people like how it works in the multiplayer mode from the original as well. And it's so important in that. And that's definitely a feeling that we want to carry. The multiplayer mode, the co-op, the single player throughout the entire game.
Absolutely. I didn't see. You said, about the T energy, the thermal energy. You mentioned that because the planet is thawing and that there will be a lot more environments to go through, that it still has a function in the cold, but what do we know, or can we say what the function is, like in a warm environment, like what the purpose of collecting that energy is?
You can look at it from two different perspectives. There's the gameplay perspective of why you have to pick it up, and the story perspective of why people are going after the thermal energy. From the gameplay perspective, I can certainly say that even though the setting is different, collecting thermal energy is still going to be as important as it was in the first one. You're still going to need it to power weapons, to work the VSs,
right.
that kind of thing. And, because there's four of you, potentially playing on the co-op, you're going to need to share, the thermal energy between you well. And if you don't, do that well enough, that you're not going to be able to, proceed and use the VSs and that kind of thing that you're going to need to proceed. From a story perspective, obviously there's been a kind of, global warming on EDN 3, but just, because things have warmed up, that's definitely not to say that the snow pirates don't need the thermal energy anymore. They do need it, and they need it more than ever before. And there's lots of different groups all competing for
Right.
this limited resource. So I mean, you can look at it certainly as it's kind of like oil, that kind of thing in the world, where you're still needed to
Right.
for your everyday life.
Right. Makes a lot more sense.